breaking news, a school shooting with reports of multiple fatalities.
He had ran up to me and yelled at me to give me my purse.
A warning for online shoppers tonight. A new scam that could steal your personal information in just a matter of seconds.
Breaking news, a deadly carjacking in Woodland Hills.
Tonight, police in Lancaster, Texas have identified a possible suspect. Investigators say pointed a gun at a passing car.
Good morning. It is the 25th day of January 2019, and you're listening to the Heart of America Broadcasting Network. Since it is a Friday, this is our Situational Security edition of the program. Got a couple of folks lined up to come talk with us today. First, we're going to be joined by Officer TJ Armstrong. TJ is a longtime friend of the broadcast, so we're going to be talking about ways to interact with law enforcement. And then a little bit later on this morning, Michelle Lunsford is going to come and talk to us about the tragic story of her daughter perishing in an automobile accident because of distracted driving, and it might not be exactly what you think it is. So we are going to have both of those conversations today as our attempts to keep you safe in any situation. This, of course, is a function of the Heart of America Talk Radio Network. Check us out online at Heart, H-A-R-T, heartofamerica.net, and a lot of exciting things going on over there. And also, just a reminder that if your outside group, your organization, your political, well, I don't know, affiliations are always looking for folks to come out and speak to them at their events, we are certainly available to do that. So just drop your emails to Michael at Heart, H-A-R-T, Michael at heartofamerica.net. I have known TJ Armstrong for some time now. I know him to be one of the goodest of the good guys, and I'm always so delighted to have the opportunity to hang out with him, even if it's just via the telephone. And one of the reasons I wanted to have TJ on with us today is obviously so much going on in the news lately. We continue to have the news, the sad, sick news of officer-involved shootings. The death of several officers. Had one here in the state of Alabama, a couple of them actually, Birmingham and Mobile. And since we're broadcasting live from there, worth mentioning that, but of course all across the country. And also, of course, we are still dealing with the investigation of a local officer-involved shooting at a local mall. And I know that in these times when things are testy and confusing and the news is weird and everybody seems to be on edge, I think there's no better thing that we could talk about for a brief time today than ways to interact with law enforcement when we do find ourselves encountering them. And I've always appreciated TJ's approach and his demeanor and the way that he informs people, because he really does care. Not only is he a law enforcement officer, he's also a pastor, and we welcome TJ Armstrong into this edition of the Situational Security broadcast, brought to you by heartofamerica.net. How are you, TJ?
Hey, Michael. Doing great. Good morning. How are you?
I'm just fantastic, and I appreciate you hanging out with us. I know it's a little bit early in the day. You're just getting your day started, but we've been looking forward to this for some time. I know you and I had talked about it. Actually started a couple of weeks ago, and I just wanted to bring you on and talk a little bit. You know, the very first Situational Security, I typically have reproduced the Michael Hart Show online, and we're right now on Periscope, and we're on Twitter, and we're on Facebook, and we're on YouTube and all kinds of other places. We're broadcasting live right now. But, you know, at one point in time, and it was primarily right after the whole Galleria thing went off, that I really started to feel compelled to start talking about situational awareness. And you'll probably recall many years ago, back in the old 101 days, when we were all on a terrestrial tower, that the station produced a situational security conference in Birmingham, Alabama, that was attended by right around 4,000 people and was wildly successful. although I cannot reproduce that on the air, I wanted to do something similar to it, to share with people ways that we can be safe and secure in our everyday life. And with all the things going on in the world around us today, and all the news, police officer-involved shootings, officers that have been killed in the line of duty, I could not think of anything that I wanted to talk about more than how the average citizen should interact with law enforcement, whether they're in a mall or they're pulled over or whatever the case may be. So I'd like to kind of start, if you don't mind, with the mindset of law enforcement towards the general population, to kind of give us a little bit of inside baseball as the way that you guys think and process, so that we might be aware of what you're dealing with.
Sure, Michael, and this is my first time on the podcast, so I appreciate you having me on. And again, I am working, so I apologize for any background noise in advance.
No, you're fine.
To answer your question, there's really not a general blanket thought process that every officer has towards just people in general or towards citizens in general. I think that every situation is different, and it goes back to our training to be able to do that. I think that if somebody, whether they be in law enforcement or any other line of work, if they can have just a general perception of people, a preconceived notion of who people are prior to getting to know that individual, then they probably don't need to be in that line of work anyway. But I think for me, I think that just my perception and where I kind of believe people are right now is, it changes every day, Michael. I guess that's a tough question to answer because, for example, 1 week it seems like everybody hates the police. And then a few days ago, we had the protests, we had different things, and there were so many people that seemed to be against, quote-unquote, the racist police or whatever the situation may be. Right. And then the very next week, I had people coming up to me telling me how much they appreciated me. And this was in that same neighborhood. I was doing a side job over in the Hoover area. So it changes day to day, and it changes from person to person. But I believe that most law enforcement individuals look at the public as, the sheep and sheepdog mentality, Michael. It's just basically we're here to serve, we're here to protect, and we're here to do whatever we can do. Just allow us to do our job to the best of your ability.
There have been so many debates over the years about ways that people should interact with law enforcement. Obviously, the average American is never going to come into any kind of contact with law enforcement in terms of a situation where they might be pulled over or whatever. That's actually a relatively rare thing for the general population. But in the event that somebody is approached by law enforcement, because over the years, TJ, we've had a lot of debates about, okay, I've got a weapon. Do I tell the cop I've got the weapon in the car, or should I stand my ground, or should I smart off, or what is your general thought process about whenever you have any interaction with the public, just in almost any situation, traffic or anything related to that, where you would like to see the people respond, where everything is diffused, so to speak?
Well, every officer is different, but I think the situation you just brought up, for example, with a traffic stop and someone has a weapon in their vehicle, personally for me, I don't care. I don't care to know. Now, every officer is not like that, and in some states you have to declare that you have a weapon, that you are a concealed carry permit holder. As for me personally, I don't care, because my thought process is if you are going to tell me that you have a weapon, then you're probably not going to use it against me anyway. The bad guys don't follow the law. So, if your intent is to do harm to me, then you're not going to tell me about it anyway. You're just going to surprise me. So it doesn't matter to me if you tell me that you have a weapon or not. But some officers do like that. It is a courtesy. But the way that I approach people and the way that I like to be approached is just a careful but cautious, if that makes any sense. You get pulled over, for example, by a police officer. The police officer, 9 times out of 10, of course there are bad apples in every industry, but generally speaking, the police officer has a reason to pull you over. And the guy's just doing his job. He's not out there stopping you just because he doesn't like what you look like. He's not out there stopping you because he's got a personal vendetta against people that drive that sort of car. He's out there doing his job. There's a reason for the stop. And sometimes the officer could be wrong, and that's why we have a court system. One of the things that drives me crazy, being in law enforcement, as long as I've been in, is when you have somebody pulled over on the side of the road, and they want to have court right there on the side of the road. Well, I wasn't doing that, or I didn't run that stop sign, or whatever the situation may be. Just be calm and understand that we have a court system. That's not giving in to the police officer. That's not allowing the police officer to win, so to speak. It doesn't mean that you're in the wrong. It just simply means, hey, we're going to let this guy do his job. We're going to move this from the side of the road, and we're going to take it to a courtroom and let somebody else handle this. And I think that's what most people don't understand, Michael, about law enforcement is they're just out there trying to do their job. And if law enforcement can do their job and know that there's not a threat and know that they're going to go home from that situation, then that gives them a peace of mind, and you don't have situations where an officer may have to act on a split-second decision and potentially make a decision that is going to live with somebody the rest of their life.
So I guess essentially what you're saying then is that there really is no benefit or upside to arguing with the cops in almost any situation, because ultimately the majority are simply going to follow the letter of the law and take it, do their job, and force it into the court system. So it's more or less wasted breath?
Absolutely, that's what I'm saying. There's nothing wrong with trying to, make a statement. For example, I pulled you over because you were doing, excess of speed. Well, no, I don't think that I was. I thought that I did stop at the stop sign. Ultimately, that law enforcement officer is going to have the final call there on the side of the road. And so that's exactly what I'm saying is you're wasting your breath. You're not going to get anywhere by arguing, because you're going to get the ticket at the very minimum. And now you could be in a situation where you're going to go to jail also. So, it's always better just to go ahead and just bite your tongue. And I think that's a maturity thing for all humans. I think that we have to get to the point where we pick and choose our battles. And, picking a battle with a police officer on the side of the road, you're just not going to win that situation. And again, it's not that the police officer is always in the right, and it's not that you're in the wrong, but it's just that that's not the time and the place.
TJ, I'm not going to ask you to really reveal anything or get too deep in terms of what happened at the Galleria, but I do want to ask you a couple things about it, because a couple things have come to our attention, and of course the investigation is ongoing, and I don't want to speak about those that are accused or those that are deceased. But one of the things that we learned was that there is this young man in a mall, presumably with a weapon drawn. Gunshots have been fired. A police officer comes up an escalator and sees a young man with a weapon, and this is how the events occur. But then we also learned that there were other people in the mall itself that had weapons on them and possibly had even drawn those weapons. That was kind of the inspiration for doing situational security, because as you know, I carry, and you and I have talked about this before, but that seemed like almost a perfect environment for a Wild West shootout to occur, not because of necessarily people that are defending the officer or the other young man, but just the lack of knowledge of what's going on, the hysteria and the crisis and the confusion that might have ensued. What are your thoughts about people that are carrying in a situation like that? Let's say there is an officer involved event, and they're not certain exactly what is going down. How do you feel about the average citizen on the street who happens to be carrying, getting involved in that, or should they retreat?
Well, Michael, I've always heard, and you have too, that the only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. Now, while I believe that statement, and I'm all for everybody carrying concealed, I also think that the only thing that's worse than a good guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun who doesn't know how to use it. And so I think that to carry a firearm efficiently and effectively, you have to have some type of training with that. And I'm not saying that should be mandatory to invoke your Second Amendment right at all, but what I am saying is that it's just good common sense. Now, as far as in a situation where you have active shooters, I think it's on a case-by-case basis, but I think generally speaking, retreat. I've been in law enforcement 17 years. I am a husband. I'm a father. If I'm in that situation and I'm at the mall, and let's just say I was there when all of that had taken place, my first thought, even though I'm trained and I'm carrying, is I'm going to retreat. I'm going to get my family to a safe place. And if I'm there by myself, I'm still going to do the same. Because the last thing in the world that I want to do is be the hero. Because if you're the hero, you still have to live with, okay, maybe I've taken somebody out. Even if it's a justified shoot, you still have to live with that the rest of your life. So if I'm in a place like that, where I believe there's law enforcement, and in a place like the Hoover Gallery, there is law enforcement, obviously, I'm going to step back and I'm going to step out of the way until I'm forced not to. And then if I'm forced not to, I'm going to take control of the situation. So if that's my approach, even as a law enforcement officer, someone who's trained with a firearm, I would greatly suggest that would be the same approach for a citizen who's carrying, who may not have as much training. Or even if you may have more training than me. I think the best thing to do is always just to step back, because you never know what's going to happen. You don't know who the police officer is. You don't know who the good guy is. You don't know who the bad guy is. And in any situation, it can create a lot of unnecessary things and unnecessary casualties potentially.
You know, I've actually posed that question to a couple other people, and even a federal firearms trainer that essentially said the exact same thing, TJ. And I think that, you know, that it's interesting to me that there's so many people out there, since you brought up the term hero, so many people out there that think that because you are carrying a weapon that somehow you have this I don't know, this license to be heroic. Almost like you're looking for opportunities to go out and take out the bad guys. And it's so interesting that from the perspective of law enforcement, that you are, you know, that you're telling us essentially to, you know, remove by diffusing and diffuse a situation by removing yourself from it. So I'm very fascinated by that, because I think the narrative is quite the opposite, because as you are well aware, when you're talking about training related to a firearm, it's not just the training of using the firearm, but it's the mental training that accompanies it as well. And I don't think we pay nearly enough attention to that.
I agree 100%, Michael. You're exactly right. You hit the nail on the head. It all goes back to when to use a firearm. You know, the mechanics of the firearm are simple. You know, learning how the firearm works and how to hold your hands and that sort of thing, and where to aim, that's all stuff that's easy, but it's knowing when to shoot and not to shoot that's really the kicker. A few years ago, in the department that I worked at, we had an event for civilians to come in, and there was some simulated active shooter situations on a big screen. And we had a guy come in that lived in the community that was very skeptical of just every action the law enforcement made. And he came in and he went through the program and he went through the shooting situation and scenarios, and he failed. He failed miserably. And I did a little interview with him for our website when he came out, and I asked him about it, and the guy was almost in tears. He said, you know, this has really changed my life. He goes, I never really understood just when to shoot and when not to shoot. I never understood what law enforcement had to do and the decisions you had to make in the situation. In this particular video that he was in, there was a simulated active shooter situation where there was a teenage female that was the shooter, and he didn't shoot her in that situation when he should have, and that's a tough call to make. But regardless, he said, you know, it's just I never really understood. And it kind of opened his eyes up a little bit to knowing when to shoot, when not to shoot, who to shoot and who not. The decisions aren't always easy, and they're not always obvious.
Well, that's another reason that, you know, I wanted to have you on the air with us today, to always remind people that, you know, there are split-second decisions that have to be made. And, you know, the more we get into the investigation and learn about what has happened in Birmingham, Alabama, in the mall, you know, you have to realize that this event unfolded, you know, over the course of 6, 7, 8, 9 seconds. And that somebody has to, and in this case, a law enforcement officer, has to make a decision, because, you know, and I said this in the very first situational security program we did, is that officer has a right to go home at the end of the day. And, and if he's hearing gunfire and then sees somebody who's got a weapon out, the natural impulse, I would think, as a police officer, is to defend yourself and to neutralize or stabilize the situation. And I don't think a lot of people realize that, years and years ago, there was a state trooper by the name of Robert Bell, and he used to patrol all up and down. I know the larger audience won't understand the reference, the geographical reference, but the local listeners will. He used to patrol I-65 between Alabaster and downtown Birmingham. This cop, TJ, this cop chased me so many times when I was 18, 19 years old. He just got bored with it and would drive to my house and put tickets on the door. And and I knew him so well because he'd pull me over and he'd just look at me and go, "Hart, stop, just go home or do whatever." And his CB handle, because his name was Robert Bell, was Ding Dong, and unfortunately, Ding Dong was killed in a motorcycle accident about 8 or 9, 10 years ago. But he's just a great guy. But he told me one time, we were talking, because I ran into him in a McDonald's in Hoover, Alabama. We were talking, and he said something that has stuck with me all this time, because this guy was working the night shift the majority of the time. And he said, "Michael, every time I pull a car over and I have to walk up to a window on a dark interstate in the middle of the night," and pardon me for saying it this way, TJ, but this is the way he said it, "my asshole puckers." And he was basically saying that, to lighten that verbiage, the hair on the back of my neck stands up. And he was trying to demonstrate to me or share with me the intense emotional shift that a lot of police officers go through when they go from patrolling to policing. And I'd like your thoughts on that.
Well, he's exactly right. Every situation, somebody posed a question a while back. They said, how many situations in law enforcement, how many situations does a law enforcement officer go into that are armed? And the answer is every one of them, simply because there's at least one guy in there that's armed. And that's the police officer. So that being said, it does. Every situation, you don't know what to expect, whether it be a domestic violence call, which is actually the most dangerous call you can go on, an armed robbery call, or, just a simple traffic stop. I think one thing that we have to look at is what information on a call the officer has gotten. For example, you go back to this Hoover situation. We don't know the call that come across the radio, because you think about it, you've got, 1,000 people in one spot. And while they're there, somebody's calling 911. You don't know what that person is telling the officer or the dispatcher, and you don't know what the dispatcher is relaying to the officer. So the officer doesn't know what to think going into that situation. In Jasper, just a few weeks ago, in Jasper, Alabama, we had a store that was robbed. And the call came out to be on the lookout for a white car that had 3 white males. Well, it ended up being 2 white males and 2 black females, I believe, in a blue car. The situation was totally different, because you have people that are emotionally distraught when they're calling 911. So on a call, that's something we have to look at, is what's the situation with the officer and what information does he have. Now, on a traffic stop, I think the best advice that I can give to someone is, this is what I do. If I'm getting pulled over by the police, I immediately turn my dome light on, I illuminate the vehicle, and I roll down my windows, especially if it's at night. If it's at night and I can't, I'm going to roll down all of my windows. That way, when the officer comes up to the vehicle, he can see everything that he needs to see inside. Chances are there could be an officer on the passenger side as well. Now, I told you earlier that I don't disclose that I have a weapon if I'm just a citizen. That's my preference. However, if I do have a weapon, it's on me. So if I have to unbuckle my seatbelt, or if I have to go to where most people generally keep their identification in their right back pocket in their wallet, I'm going to let that officer know, hey, I am reaching back here for my wallet and I have a weapon, because in that situation, I don't want him to see, or the officer on the passenger side of my vehicle to see my weapon, see my hand brush by it, and he have a split second to make a decision that may or may not be accurate, if that makes any sense. So the best thing to do is just keep your hands in plain sight and to open up the dome light on the vehicle and illuminate it as much as possible, give the officer as much visibility, and kind of let his hair on the back of his neck stand down just a little bit.
Well, that's actually, wonderful advice, and one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on today, because, I've been so concerned in recent weeks and months with the number of officers that have, come into situations. We don't really know what happened here in the greater Birmingham area a few weeks ago, whether or not, there was a person hell-bent on taking out an officer, or if it was just a matter of somebody being frightened as they were stumbled upon while they were committing a crime. And it just seems like every other day we're learning about, another officer-involved shooting. And I realize that the conditions of those shootings are different in every situation. But, my main focus today was to remind people of the amazing amount of stress and emotion that all of these situations, it's so interesting that I had another trainer on about a month ago that made the comment to me that we can talk about this all day long, but until you're in the situation where you're having to draw your weapon, you have no idea how you're going to act or react. And that's something that's very difficult to practice. The law enforcement officers out there, TJ, well, y'all have practiced it to the degree that you can, but those of us on the other end have not. And, that's a perfect recipe for a potential disaster.
Sure it is. And a lot of agencies now are offering civilian firearms courses. I know that for anybody listening in the central Alabama area, in Cordova, Alabama, and in Walker County Sheriff's Office, we're actually about to start another one. But in Cordova, we do one every couple of months. And basically, it's a free course. We bring people out and give them a 2-hour class in the classroom with a PowerPoint, and then we take them out to the range for about an hour and let them shoot. And I think that the way that we design our class kind of reflects back to what you said just a few minutes ago, that it's about the knowing when, how, and why. It's the mental part that we really stress more than the physical part. You can always learn how to shoot a gun, but you can never have enough training in the scenarios in which to use your weapon and which not. You're right. Law enforcement has an advantage, if you choose to call it that, because we do have some training, but most civilians don't, and you don't know those situations. I tell my wife, Michael, my wife just recently started carrying a couple of years ago, and she carries, and I don't encourage people breaking the law or the rules, so let me preface with that, but she works in an industry where guns have not always been allowed. And she goes into a parking lot at night, and she leaves that parking lot, and it's dark outside. And so I encouraged her how to properly conceal carry. And she properly conceals carry, so nobody knows that she has that weapon until it's time to use it. And the only time that you're going to use it is when your life or another life is in imminent danger. And I'll say this right quick if I can, Michael, that I see so many people on social media, especially Facebook, that they'll say, well, if I see so-and-so in my yard again, I'm going to shoot them. If so-and-so comes through, they're going to get some buckshot. You can't shoot people unless your life or another life is in imminent danger. So you can't shoot somebody for stealing your car. You can't shoot somebody for coming into your yard. You can't shoot somebody for throwing rocks at your house from the road. You have to believe that your life is in imminent danger, even if you have no trespassing signs up. So my point in saying that is that you can only use your weapon if you or another person are in imminent danger. Now, the only time you should pull your weapon is if you're going to use it. So if the only time you can use it is to save the life of someone else or your own, then the only time that anybody should ever know that you're carrying, in my opinion, is when you're going to use it to save your life or somebody else's. So I think that people pulling guns for any old reason or wanting to declare that they have a firearm to kind of threaten someone or be on the offense is really a bad way of thinking. So I think that it goes back to what you said earlier, having a hero mentality, so to speak, and the narrative is to go out and to be on the offense with things and try to save the day. I think that it's a much more relaxed approach when carrying a firearm and just interacting with the public and especially with law enforcement.
Well, very, very, very good points indeed. TJ, unfortunately, we're out of time for today's broadcast, but I got to tell you that I can listen to you all day long and certainly miss hanging out with you, in the old radio days, but I'd love to have you come back and spend some more time with us in the very near future, if you would.
I'd be honored, Michael. I'd love it.
Well, you absolutely brought some wonderful information. We're going to make sure this is going to go up, of course, on our podcast as well. It'll be circulated all over the internet because it's extremely good advice, and I think people need to realize, particularly in this day and time, that everybody has a right to go home at the end of the day, and everybody plays a role when they are interacting with law enforcement. That everybody has a role to play in order to make that situation safe and secure, diffuse the tension that I'm sure is always there, and to get everybody home safe and sound, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. TJ, thank you so much for popping by.
Absolutely, Michael. Thanks. You have a great rest of the show.
You too. Thank you, sir. All right, guys, we're going to take a real quick break. That was TJ Armstrong, a local police officer in the greater Birmingham area, kind of a little to our northwest. And we're going to take a real quick break, come back on the other side, and have a conversation with a woman who's got, a rather tragic story, but a tale that hopefully will keep our young people safe on the road. You're listening to the Situational Security edition of the Heart of America program right here on heartofamerica.net. Y'all stick around. We're coming right back on the other side. Heart of America and the Michael Hart Show is brought to you in part by the Unknown America Project. Unknown America, myths and little-known oddities about the greatest nation on earth, explores many of the falsehoods and fallacies and revisions in American history that impact the beliefs and the thoughts of many people in this country today. So if you'd like to learn some of the most enduring myths that have been perpetrated on the American public for the last 100-plus years in this country, go check out the book at heartofamerica.net. That's heartofamerica.net. And pick up a copy of Unknown America. It comes out to you absolutely no shipping, be autographed, and we'll even send you a copy of the United States Constitution as our way of saying thanks. So support the Unknown America Project by simply going to theunknownamerica.com, and thank you for your support.
Does your home have a water problem? Drainage around your home can cause all kinds of headaches. Disease-causing mold, cracks in walls, foundation failure, even roof leaks. At Alabama Water Management, we know that problems can often be fixed from where the water is coming from, outside. Our approach is less invasive and less expensive. So before you spend thousands on a potentially unnecessary waterproofing system, call Alabama Water Management for a free evaluation. Alabama Water Management. Don't waterproof, water prevent.
Find Alabama Water Management on Facebook or on their website at ALAH2O.com.
Breaking news, a school shooting with reports of multiple fatalities.
He had ran up to me and yelled at me to give me my purse.
A warning for online shoppers tonight. A new scam that could steal your personal information in just a matter of seconds.
Breaking news, a deadly carjacking in Woodland Hills.
Tonight, police in Lancaster, Texas have identified a possible suspect. Investigators say pointed a gun at a passing car.
Hey, welcome back. Earlier this week, I had the opportunity and the honor of attending an event in central Alabama where I met a young lady by the name of Michelle Lunsford, and I was a speaker at this event. But prior to me coming up, Michelle actually addressed the crowd about something that she is very passionate about, and a new law that she'd like to see, or new bill she'd like to see passed into law here in the state of Alabama related to distracted driving. And her story is compelling, it's sad, but it's also it's also inspirational in what we're going to learn from it, and the death of her daughter and how horrific that must be. I'm not going to tell the story. I'm going to let her do it. But we want to talk a bit about the aspect of it. The idea behind this is to keep our young people safe on the road, but quite frankly, I think a lot of moms and dads need to be reminded of this as well, including yours truly. And we welcome Michelle Lunsford into this edition of the Heart of America program and the Situational Security edition. Hello, Michelle. How are you?
Hi. Thank you so much for having me. I'm fine. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you joining us, especially on such short notice. Michelle, tell us a little bit. Of course, you and I met this past Monday, and you shared a very sad story, but one that certainly has a very compelling message at the same time. I'm not going to pry you for information because I'm sure I can't even imagine the pain that you must feel over this issue. But tell us a little bit more about what has happened and what you would like to see happen to change this situation.
Yes. My daughter passed away in a car crash February 22nd, 2018, not quite a year yet. And we were originally told it was texting and driving, so basically from just a few days after I started speaking at the wake, I spoke to her friends and any parents that were there and made them aware of what we found out. At the time, we thought it was texting and driving, and told them that, this is what happens. This is a consequence of being distracted by your phone. I told them two things, actually, if I can share it. One was this isn't Cameron anymore. This is just her body. She is in heaven. She was saved. She was a Christian. I know exactly where she is. I didn't lose her. I know where she is. And the second thing I talked with them about is texting and driving. And I made each and every one of them promise me not to do it. And it just kind of went from there. I've been able to talk to many students and parents and people about distracted driving. Very recently, actually August, I guess, I ended up finding out her phone was, as all these kids have them on, have it locked. So I couldn't actually get on it for many, many months to know, what. It took a while, but I ended up.
Michelle, did I lose you?
Much a shock and surprise because I had many a days talking simply about texting, but more so important, come to find out, because a lot of people claim not. I don't.
Well, obviously, I think, folks, we're having a little bit of technical difficulty here. Michelle, can you hear me?
Hear me?
Yeah, you're kind of in and out.
Oh no, I'm on a landline. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Hey, we're all friends here. It's technology. Basically, we heard you up to the point where you were at the funeral. You were talking to the young people. You had broken into her phone some months later. So take it from there.
Yep. Okay. And just let them know that, number one, that wasn't her body. I know where she is. She's in heaven. I didn't lose her. Number two, I thought it was texting and driving. I made them promise to put their phones down when they drive. And basically it's just taken off from there that I've been able to talk to some schools and churches and just anyone who will let me, teen driver summits, talk about the life and death consequences of distracted driving.
Now, I understand. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Michelle, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor if you can hear me, because we're having some problems hearing you. We're going to go ahead and disconnect the call. Can you do me a favor and hang up and just call right back in? And
I'll call. Do I need to call on a different line?
No. I think we're going to try on this phone. Just,
okay.
If you're on a landline, just go ahead and give us a call back in, and we'll reset this real quick.
Do it right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're having a conversation with Michelle Lunsford. And one of the reasons that we wanted to have her call in and talk to us a bit is because of what she discovered after the phone was, I guess the word was hacked into, broke into, or whatever the case may be. But also it's a clarion call about safety and security, not just for our young people, because we all do it. The phone is right there. In my case, it's in the console of my truck. You know, you got that big old armrest thing. It's got that little indentation on the top of it, and my phone rides there right alongside me as though it's some kind of a co-pilot, and something will ding or cling or go off or ring or what, you know, and then, of course, the idiotic notifications that we get on pretty much everything, and it's just so irritating to me that, well, first of all, I probably need to turn my notifications off, for one thing. But we've got Michelle Lunsford calling back in, and we're going to be talking about, exactly what happens when that phone was looked at. Can you hear me okay, Michelle?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Bring us up to the point where you made the comment that you were unable to get into her phone initially, but then eventually you were, and I think you discovered something that you did not anticipate.
Absolutely. We had been told that she was texting and driving, and after I was able to find out through her Gmail activity, I saw, it's really neat. It shows you everything you do on your phone, and so I saw where she had gone into Snapchat, and I saw what was written out, her words, and it had a little play button there, and I hit the play button, and I actually heard she had recorded 2 conversations, which were her last conversations, and I actually heard her talking. And so she wasn't texting. Honestly, she wasn't breaking a law. She wasn't texting. She was recording the conversation and then distracted by her phone, most likely reading the response of her friend. So to me, all the more important, it really goes to show that her eyes were off the road. She wasn't texting, however, she was distracted by that phone. She looked up, she slammed her brakes on, going 40 miles an hour, and she didn't see the stopped 18-wheeler in front of her, and she went underneath it.
Oh, I hate to hear that. When got off the line with us a moment ago, in the interim, before you call back in, I was making the comment that, you know, even adults do something similar, and
Absolutely,
how,
yes.
you know, my phone, because not only do I do this, but I'm also a contractor. I own a small contracting company, and I work 7 days a week, and my phone is my constant companion. I do show prep for the show in my phone. I do contracts for a drainage company in my phone. I do everything through my phone. And it's always right there with me. And it's easy to get distracted because, you know, obviously when there's a phone call, the phone rings. Now, I've got most of my other notifications turned off, but I have my phone turned on and my text messages turned on. And it's very difficult to hear a notification because, you know, at the end of the day, for the most part, Michelle, notifications are happy. It's like, you've got mail. You know, somebody needs me. Somebody wants me. There's somebody out there trying to connect with me. And there's such a positive notion about that it's so difficult to not glance at it. But glancing at it, even at 40 miles an hour, as you have pointed out to us, can in fact be quite deadly and quite sad at the same time. So what is it that you would like people to know? Because I know when you came in Babacare, you talked about, you know, the possibility of changing some laws or you know, updating the codes, or, you know, what can we do to get the message out? Because I don't care who you are, we all do it to a degree.
I was the worst one, and when I talk to any of these students or anyone, I tell them I don't point any fingers at you because they're pointed at me first. I was the one doing it. I was doing it, all of it. And, you know, coming on this side of it, the wake-up call that you get, you realize what a role model I was. Our children are going to do what they see us do, not our words, but our actions. And so, you know, first and foremost, take responsibility while you're driving as a parent. You know, realize that they're watching you. Realize that they're, you know, and it's so important for us too as well. There's no one singular group that needs to be, you know, that can be on their phone and others shouldn't be. But our 15 to 20-year-olds, with their lack of experience, we're losing them. They're dying in epidemic proportions, according to the National Safety Council and many other places. What can you do? Changing the law. Right now, it's texting and driving is simply it. $25 fine. So minimal. There is nothing to keep anyone from doing it. Why? $25? Changing that law, because we're losing people. They're dying. If you pay, I've been told I'm hyper aware. Yes, I am. When I hear an accident's happen on the road, I immediately get online, and almost every single time, they swerved over in the median and hit an oncoming car. They lost control of their vehicle, flipped over, and you read this, and it had to do with distracted driving. What can happen? Put on your do not disturb feature, just to be responsible in your car. It's a hard habit to break. It absolutely is. But, what's more important? Your life, your passenger's life, those around you. You see it every day. If you put your phone down for 2 days and watch, people are not paying attention to the road. And I just can't stress enough that we need to be responsible while we're on the road. Be the change that needs to happen, and it has to start with us. Just because a law, is hopefully going to pass, in March and April, people need to be aware. They need to be aware of the life and death consequences that are associated with taking that chance of picking up that phone.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I was actually doing a TV program yesterday and was driving up 78, kind of in the Forestdale area, which I realize a lot of the listeners outside the region don't know the area. But I came up over a hill, a small rise in the road, upon a car that was going significantly slower and below the speed limit. And as I went around this car, I realized that the driver was looking down at a phone. And, had I been 5 miles an hour faster or 2 seconds further up the road, I'm probably going to rear end this vehicle. And I just don't think people realize how frequently those events take place every single day. If you think about it for a moment, Michelle, it's almost miraculous we don't see more of this.
I agree 100%. I mean, your actions aren't just impacting you. They're impacting all those around you. And you see it every day.
So what would you like to see? What would you think would be a law that would prevent people? Is it just a matter of awareness? Is it a matter of, because one of the problems that I have with the texting law as it is that I think there is a sense of privacy in our vehicles. In other words, the cops aren't going to see me texting. And I know for a fact there's people out there that'll actually hide their phones or put their phones down if they see a cop, passing them on the other side of the road. And, people, they've already gotten conditioned to don't let the cops see your phone in your hand. And so I'm kind of curious as to what you think might be the appropriate, at least legal response as we continue to educate moms and dads about the crisis that we have on our hands here.
Well, I think I relate it to like seatbelts. Many years ago, we didn't wear seatbelts, and now not everybody does, but everybody put your seatbelt on. The chances of you making it through a crash are going to be greater. It's a fact, and kind of the same situation. First off, make it a law. Allow the police to be able to enforce that, but also awareness. Campaigns of awareness. People need to understand the what ifs. My what ifs aren't there anymore. I don't have an opportunity. I don't get a second chance to talk to my daughter or consider the consequences. But you do now. You can think about what ifs. If I pick up this phone, what might happen? Not only are you not watching the road, but the people around you aren't either. I think awareness is a huge part. Once this bill passes, I don't think what I need to be doing is done. I do think, it's still bringing people to the understanding that, this is unsafe. That's what I think. The law should be passed, but continue on with awareness. Whatever campaigns need to happen to continue on. It's not just here in Alabama. It's many states right now are going through the same thing, trying to pass this hands-free to make that one step where law enforcement can, enforce this law and should drive people, to at least think about the consequences. It may just be financially at this point, but this is just, like I said, growing in epidemic proportions all over the nation, and it's time. It has to stop.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what the law looks like?
I've only recently been given a copy of, the House bill,
right.
One of the copies, and, basically it just is taking the phone out of the hand, out of, where you have it in your hand. You can have it in the car, you can have it on, you can have it, where it's on one of these little things that you can attach to your vehicle, and you can have it, because, I use my GPS all the time. I just take care, I set it before I go anywhere, and it talks to me. You can do that. It's not where you have to have it in your off or in your purse or something of that nature. You can have it. Just don't have it in your hand where you're constantly distracted by it. I haven't actually read through the whole thing, and I know that I haven't read the Senate bill at all, to be honest. But I know that the main focus of it is just not having, a phone in your hand or any sort of device, telecommunication device in your hand.
Now, would that also impact people making telephone calls specifically?
Yes. Yes, it would. Well, in regard to, in their hand, yes, to have it in their hand, dial the number, and put it to their ear, yes, it would. And it also makes it a primary offense right now. It's a secondary. If police see you texting, there has to be another reason they pull you over. They can't just pull you over for texting. You have to be swerving, speeding, whatever. There has to be another reason that they're pulling you over. And this hands-free law would make it a primary offense. If they saw it in your hand, yes, they could pull you over simply for that.
I didn't realize that, actually. I didn't realize that they couldn't pull you over. So no. There has to be something in addition, too.
Yes. It's a secondary offense.
Actually was not aware of that. Very interesting. So tell us a little bit more about how we can learn more about this. Are there websites where we can study up on it? You want people, obviously, to become involved, to talk to their kids, to talk to their family members. Maybe church groups need to take this up or whatever. But is there a place, pardon me, Michelle, is there a place on the Internet where we can learn more? Or, how can we find, because, although you're speaking primarily about getting this passed in Alabama, my interest is to make certain that people understand that this is a crisis that is plaguing this country nationwide. And it is so much more than just what's going on our local streets. And people need to be very, very, very aware of that. So are there any resources? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yes.
But are there any resources that
all.
you could share with?
Yes, I do, actually. I actually received an invitation to go to Chicago. The National Safety Council had a 2018 Survivor Advocacy Training Workshop back in November, and I went up there for 3 days and learned a lot. So I would tell you the NSC.org website is an absolute wonderful resource for all types of information regarding safety, distracted driving, all different, kinds of safety-related. It is a wonderful website to go to. That's where I would absolutely tell you to go as a resource to see all kinds of things that they're working on.
Well, that's a very good recommendation indeed, because we do want to keep people safe, because it's not just a matter of the texting. It's also, as you point out, it's pretty much everything. And I think just bringing awareness to it, because, there's been debates over the years about even, automobile manufacturers and whether or not they should take, some of the radios out of cars or whatnot. And like in the case with my own wife's car, she drives I drive a pickup truck, but she drives a car which is essentially a computer on 4 wheels. And everything is touch screen and, voice activation. And I almost think that some of that stuff could be dangerous, because it requires you to take your eyes off the road, at least in terms of the touch screen, momentarily. So we need to bring awareness to the fact that, this is an epidemic in this country, and it's so unbelievably preventable. But with everything, pinging at us and dinging at us, and you've got mail, and somebody Snapchatted you, and your phone's ringing, and all of our phones will give us a text tone, and if we don't look at it, it texts us again. It gives us another tone. It's almost like our phones are demanding that they be picked up. And I think we need to be aware of this, Michelle.
Absolutely. And, these kids that are just, if you don't mind me saying, so many of our children are now growing up with these phones, and they, that is part of who they are now. That phone is so important to them. Do you think when they're 15 years old and they've had that phone in their hand for 3, 4, 5, possibly 5 years, when they get in that car for the first time, after they get comfortable with driving, when after they get comfortable, you don't think they're going to pick that up and be looking at it with their complete inexperience on the road? That's scary. That's very scary. Cameron was my one and only child. That's it. I thank God for the man I married, and he has 3 children and 2 older. So, I'll get to be a grandma, one day, or I actually am now through him. But, it's so scary. That's it. Parents, I know no one wants to lose a child, and think for a second, just stop for a second and think about the role model you're being for them. Talk with them, make them aware of the dangers. I just can't even describe to you every single day the pain. Not just for me, for my husband, who was her stepfather, right. my mother, my father. She worked with my brother and sister. She actually left the restaurant. That day is embedded. My sister is the one that came upon the accident. She's the one who I was on the phone with when she saw the policeman and she saw her car. And that is ingrained in her head every single day. She lives that. And it's a nightmare. And I don't want anyone else to go through something that is 100% preventable. 100%. Put your phone down. Keep your eyes on the road.
Couldn't say it better myself. Michelle, thank you so much. I'm so sorry for the pain that you are enduring, but I applaud you for your efforts and taking the situation that's obviously horrific and tragic and using it as a clarion call for others to pay attention, to keep their own people safe and remind us. And I definitely would love to have you back again very soon.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, Michelle, we're going to part ways. I'm going to wrap this program up, but again, I appreciate you. Real quick before we let you go, what is the name of the organization one more time so we can check out their website?
www.nsc.org.
Excellent. Michelle Lunsford, everybody. Thank you, Michelle. We'll talk very soon.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, guys, go check it out right now. It's kind of tragic if you even see, there's a YouTube Michelle up, and she was actually tracking her daughter. You know how you can do the little location thing? And she saw where the car stopped and did not know at that point in time that her daughter had been in this accident. And it's certainly very, very, very tragic. So watch the phones. I know it's tough. Well, the darn thing is sitting there. It's almost like it's beckoning you to love it and pet it and cherish it and pamper it. I get that. And then you have notifications, and the notifications, there's an urgency about our phones that young people, I think they feel the urgency much more than their moms and dads do. It's so funny that now when we get a ping or a ding or a notification or our phone rings, it's almost like you want to run to it. You want to embrace the phone no matter where you are. Where, as in the olden days when, the phone would ring, that old phone with the long cord hanging up on the wall in the kitchen, and your first thought is, now who the hell is calling during dinner? Yeah, our mindsets have definitely changed in this country. So let's be very, very, very situationally aware in that regard. 2 great messages today, ways to interact with law enforcement, as well as the message from Michelle Lunsford, of course, Officer T.J. Armstrong. Do us a solid, would you? Spread the message of this program around. Let's let everybody know ways they can be situationally aware. And if you're enjoying the information that we're putting out, go and check out the Patreon page. Go over at heartofamerica.net and click on the orange Patreon button for $7 a month. You can help us continue this broadcast and spread the word. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but every little bit helps as we're continuing to expand our technology. And if you're a business owner, for as little as $79 a month, We will put your message all over the internet, give you banner ads as well up on some of the podcast replays. And the neat thing about advertising in an online format as opposed to terrestrial radio is that once that thing gets sent on a podcast, it is there indefinitely. So, when you buy a radio spot on a terrestrial signal, it plays, it's gone. It's over with. It never comes back again. But when you do it online, it is archived in perpetuity. So what a great way to advertise your business. More information over at the heartofamerica.net. Click on the orange Patreon link for everything you get and the various tiers. If you would like to have more information, you can just email me, Michael, Michael, at heartofamerica.net. I will be the one that writes the spots, and I can either voice them myself or have somebody else professionally do them at absolutely positively no additional charge. That's it for us. We'll be back with you live Monday morning at 8 a.m. Please share the program with as many people as you possibly can. We will be very appreciative as our numbers continue to grow and grow, and we're so excited.